In places like India, there's been a great deal of aqua mining, which is taking the water from the aquifers, and now there is a reduction of water. We don't talk enough about other animals and plants and ecosystems and the results on them. If any of you know the work of John Todd, he's somebody who studied how does the planet purify water, that there are ecological systems that purify water, and they're genius. And then overall, there's a diminishment of clean water. So this is a lake this is the largest lake in China. 2/3 of the water is gone. Drought and the Three Gorges Dam. So this is both diversion and climate change. Okay, energy. The global conversation about energy is beginning. The public is, I would say, less involved than nation states and certainly energy barons and security forces. But the issue is who has control about energy, production, access, prices, availability. These are big issues. There are security forces all over the world mobilizing around energy issues. Governments and corporations are joining to protect and preserve energy, keeping prices at certain levels. There are military occupations and social stress around energy. I don't know if you would agree with me, but whatever's going on in the Middle East, in Iraq and Afghanistan, has certainly something to do with oil, if not majorly to do with oil. There are sovereignty issues. Can we invade other countries for energy? Is that ethical? There are economic issues, there are ecological issues, and there's toxicities from every form of energy production, including wind. I don't present wind there as the clean one amidst all the dirty ones, but even any energy that we're going to produce, any energy we're going to use has some kind of side effect. And I wanted to just briefly mention this mining company in Guatemala. They want a certain piece of land. They threw off the indigenous people. They came back and rebuilt their houses. They then burned the houses. People came back and rebuilt them again. The mining company went in and actually sexually assaulted 11 women, killed 2 men, and this security force belongs to the mining company. So this is what's happening in terms of ordering the world. So there's difficult times. It's serious and difficult. And then there's more issues, which I'm not going to spend any more time on, but I couldn't just walk away from. The systemic injustices around gender, to me, are just a colossal human rights issue and very difficult to address, although things are changing slowly. We have a new form of slavery. 27 million people are now considered slaves around the world. Most of those are women and girls trafficked for sexual slavery. We have economic disparities, the 1 and the 99%. We have more environmental refugees in the world. We have all these ecological issues. We have ecological illiteracy, meaning we don't even know how the natural world functions. We don't know how to grow food, most of us. And do we think about what happens when beauty diminishes? What happens to our religious imagination and our spiritual sensibilities? One effort to put these things together, one effort is the Earth Charter. I would encourage all of you to go have a look at the Earth Charter. It's not very long, it's online, very available. It's one way to say these issues are interconnected and we need a vision. And we need a sustainable future based on a vision that interconnects these. So it's one effort, and it certainly has been the most negotiated document the human community has ever seen. Thousands and thousands of people have been involved in developing the Earth Charter. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. But we're going to talk about spiritual wisdom. So for a little while, spiritual wisdom that is within the tradition, and then I'm going to talk about 2 other sources that we may not pay attention to. I think it's an often ignored aspect of religious and spiritual traditions is the cultivation of the self. How do we cultivate interiority? How do we become it's not just a person of peace, but a person of depth. How do we educate our desires? How do we become genuinely mindful? This is not about retreating from the world. This is becoming a person of maturity. How do we actually talk about repentance and forgiveness, solidarity, interiority? How do we sacrifice? And these are classic notions, but I think that kind of human depth is somewhat required in our time. And then the whole realm of social ethics. Certainly Christianity has an enormous amount of strengths in its social ethics. So how do we analyze social issues? How do we do political, economic analysis? How do we speak of structural injustices and systemic inequities? There are progressive religious movements around the world, and in each religion there are progressive pockets. And they are talking about liberations of all different kinds, and that is a theme within the Christian tradition. Ecological issues or eco-justice, these are now themes within the Christian tradition. Nonviolent resistance and that kind of training, I would say, is not a strong theme in the Christian tradition, but it is in the Hindu tradition, it is in the Buddhist traditions, and it can be in the Christian traditions if we learn it and pay attention. So I'm going to say that these are all part of a vision. But I can't avoid saying there's a lot of impairments in our vision, particularly from a Catholic perspective, I would say. So in the first part, do we really think religions in their current form can respond to this level of challenge in the world today? So many of us who do this kind of work, we do a lot of retrieval. We retrieve themes, we reconstruct, we reinterpret. So we take the tradition and we try to build a bridge between what's happening in the tradition and what's happening in the world. My own view is it's quite insufficient. Now, this lecture is part of a series of lectures called Lectures in Catholic Experience. And so in Ottawa, I can tell you that the preoccupations right now are not the world, it's the new missile. That's, I'm afraid, what people are worried about. They're worried about, well, the institutional aspect of the church is worried about the shortage of priests, credibility, sexuality. They're worried about their authority, or they're reducing authority, or they're pushing their authority. Terribly worried about reclaiming Vatican II. I was saying to Mike as well, I had a conversation with Bishop Rémy Duroux, who is very interested in reclaiming Vatican II. And I said, but I think we're past Vatican III. I mean, I don't understand. To me, Vatican II is so, it's not even close to responding to the world. All kinds of things were missing. The world is not even close to Vatican II. Anyway, I didn't win that one either. I have to say the Catholic Church in Ottawa is very, very upset at whether people sit or stand in the pew. I mean, that is a very big preoccupation. So when I look at those sets of preoccupation versus these sets of preoccupations, I can't help but say ill-equipped or impaired vision or something. Theological concerns around the world are still about Christology, biblical hermeneutics, salvation, I mean, all these themes. Salvation usually meaning salvation in the next world. So sin, redemption, kind of Christology, these are the preoccupations. I don't even think they come close to what's going on in the world. That's my view. So I would say, where are we going to find the vision and the analysis and the wisdom and the spirituality to respond? So when I use the word spirituality, it's not so much a particular content, but it's not information. It's insights. It's awareness. It's a teacher of consciousness. It expands the mind. It's like breath. It's a vitality. Or Teilhard de Chardin talks about spirituality. It's a zest for life. It awakens awe and wonder lead to reverence, and reverence leads to ethics. These are all interconnected, and spirituality is like a fire that awakens all of this. It builds a bridge between aesthetics and ethics. And all the world's religions, whenever they all have some kind of way of talking about moving from death to life, sleep to awake, confinement to liberation, illusion to clarity. There is a move. There is a transformation. So one way to talk about a spiritual vision is to be present to earth on earth's terms. Now this is the beginning of the two new voices. So I'm interested in what is going to educate our moral imagination. This is a term used by John Paul Lederach, of how are we going to have a sufficient moral imagination and vision to respond. So the first comes from the postmodernists, and I just want to tell you why I'm doing this. So some of you I know well, and you know that I have spent much of my life trying to understand all kinds of different things. But I spent years in L'Arche trying to understand suffering. I went to Latin America and studied liberation theology. I've studied feminist theology. I had the privilege of studying and trying to understand Thomas Berry. So I feel very privileged in my quest for meaning and vision.